Over 5 months, we roamed more than 9,000 kilometers through 20 diverse states of Mexico. Not in search of the well-known, but instead the quietly extraordinary. What we found wasn't in brochures or guidebooks, but down back roads and behind unassuming doorways. The kind of beauty you earn by simply showing up, by staying curious, and by choosing the long way around. We found a Mexico that defies expectation, not just in its towering volcanoes and jungle-wrapped waterfalls, but in its warmth, its rhythm, and its soul. The people welcomed us with open hearts. The food was as vibrant as the landscapes, from mountain pueblos to arid canyons and turquoise coastlines. This is not the Mexico you see in postcards. It's the one you feel in your bones, the one that reveals itself slowly, if you're willing to roam. This morning, we're parked just north of the Nogales border crossing in preparation for our entrance into mainland Mexico in a couple hours. We've crossed into Baja, Mexico the last 2 winters, so the actual crossing doesn't really concern us too much. However, we've chosen mainland Mexico to explore this time around, and admittedly, there's a little bit of apprehension concerning that. We'll be driving first through the state of Sonora and then into Chihuahua in search of a route through the Copper Canyon. Territory we've been told is frequented by the Mexican Cartel.
Oh, babe, you ready to go to Mexico?
Yeah.
Let's go to Mexico.
We'll have to tamp down our apprehensions though, because we believe strongly in finding out for ourselves instead of being stopped by the projected concerns and fears of others. Mexico awaits us, and who knows what we'll find there.
All right, babe. No turning back. Going to Mexico. Well, what's next, babe?
We gotta get our temporary import permit. TIP for Big Girl Betty.
Yeah. And look, we found some other Overland people. That's cool. Well, we did it. Well, the entire TIP FMM process was actually pretty painless.
Border crossing, it was all easy peasy, lemon squeezy.
Yeah, we crossed it somewhere around, I think 10 o'clock, 10-ish, 10:30. And I think it's almost 12 now. So overall, it's just been an hour and a half. And yeah, easy. Don't mind it.
We'll be making our way through Sonora fairly quickly. There's nothing in particular here that we're keen to see, and our first pin on our map is Parque Nacional Basia, which lies within the border of Chihuahua. We've got a long way to go to get to the mountains, and the sun is already high in the sky. After a long day of driving, we found an unassuming gravel turnoff from the main road, which we followed to camp for the night. We'll only be staying the night with an early rise and quick push off the next morning.
Well, first camp in Mexico. That was a long day.
A good night's sleep, and we're back on the road once again. Soon after our early morning departure, we found the foot of the mountains and began to climb. The roads here are a level of winding that can set your stomach off in minutes. Our traverse through the mountains from Sonora to Chihuahua lasted hours longer than we expected. We seemingly moved at a snail's pace between climbing steep passes and then descending equally steep roads on the other side. We never really topped 50 kilometers per hour. Then, finally, at the top of another long climb, the sign for Chihuahua appeared around the corner. With a quick sigh of relief, we crossed into the new state and left Sonora behind.
That was hard. It was hard to get here.
As a consolation prize, we rested that night beside the highway and enjoyed this vibrant sunset. It had been another long day of driving, but we were stoked to be exploring mainland Mexico.
Mexico!
Another day of driving later, we had arrived at Parque Nacional Basia. This was to be the first of many places we discover in Mexico that you'll simply not find on the travel brochures. No one told us that Mexico has its own version of Yosemite Valley just a few hours south of the border. The hike down to the frigid cold pool at the base of the waterfall was an easy 30-minute descent. After 3 long days of driving, we were both eager to stretch our legs and, at least for a brief moment, soak our bodies in some fresh water. After the falls, we pressed on eastwards towards the town of Creel, and eventually the start of the Copper Canyon route we had chosen. For camp that day, we found a spot overlooking another impressive river canyon. It was quiet and peaceful, a good spot to recharge before possibly the biggest adventure during our time in Mexico. Bumping down this gravel road towards our spot for the night, we were excited about getting some gravel under the tires and a little bit of twisty terrain as well. The steep descent in the final 100 meters left us a little bit concerned about our exit the next morning, but as we'd soon learn, this was nothing in comparison to what lay ahead of us in the days to come. Day 5, and we were already blown away again and again by what we were seeing. How had we never heard of these places? Why isn't anyone talking about northern Mexico? We sat there looking out over these incredible landscapes and couldn't help but wonder. But then it hit us. For years, much of Mexico has been overshadowed by a media-driven narrative of fear. It's no surprise so few people venture here. They've been led to believe that they'll be abducted, robbed, or worse, because that's the dominant story being told. Yes, there are risks here, just as there are anywhere in the world. Bad actors always exist, even in the most beautiful corners. But people still live, work, and travel here, just like they do in every other place that carries its own complexities. This morning, we're heading for the town of Urique. Nestled deep in the Urique Canyon, an offshoot of Barranca del Cobre, or Copper Canyon, this area has been well known for a long time to contain a prominent cartel presence, and little did we know at the time, we had already been passing subtle indicators of cartel along our travels, and we were about to get a lot more up and personal. A little more gravel, some aired-down tires, and a few hours later, there it was, our first sight of the Copper Canyon.
Oh my gosh.
We'd seen photos of this route that looked impressive, but even those left us massively unprepared for the spectacle that lay ahead of us. You know that feeling of being small in a grand landscape that we always talk about? This right here is what we mean by that.
Ooh. Wow. Is it
Yeah. Glaciers are cool.
We remained at this mirador for 2 days simply to absorb as much of the grandeur and beautiful light as possible. Sunset, sunrise, sunset, sunrise. Billions of these familiar cycles have happened over this spot, and we were oh so fortunate to have borne witness to at least a few of them. Our third day in the Urique Canyon, and it was time to descend to the bottom, a drive that we will never, ever forget. At the base of the canyon, beside the Urique River, we made camp for the night. We looked up at where we'd come from and marveled at how the view was just as impressive from below as it was from above. As thoughts of our descent faded, we turned our attention to the ascent before us, a drive that would prove just as memorable as our recent descent, but in a very different way. But before we'd bed down for the night, a very important lesson had to be learned. Watch out for power lines.
Well, this is the first look at the road up to Batopilas, or up and over, and this is getting to the upper limit of what we're capable of, so we'll see if we can continue to make it.
The ascent out of the Urique Valley would take us up steep switchbacks to a mountain pass that would lead southeast across the mountains and then down to the town of Batopilas. Rain from the previous year's rainy season had dug deep gouges in the road, and there had been no equipment available since to come and repair it, making for an interesting and mildly trepidatious climb.
Up. A perfect platform right here, and we're basically right at the top.
Holy moly. Wow. I can't believe that we came from over there. I'm pretty sure.
Well,
Wait, over. Oh, no, right there.
those are the towns above Guapalena.
Arriving in this seemingly perfect spot wasn't quite as fortuitous as we had initially surmised. We were unaware that we had stumbled upon someone else's spot, someone who was already and had been for a while well aware of our presence.
So one thing we noticed as soon as we got to this spot was this solar panel right here. And I walked over to it because I was curious. And I saw that there's a charger right there for a Kenwood radio. While I was reading about this route and watching various YouTube videos and stuff like that, and like information online, a lot of people state very clearly that we're going through cartel country. Now, from what we've read, the cartels are mainly like marijuana cartels, I guess. But I heard people talking about how they'd be driving this route and there'd be guys just popping out of the road with radios, basically letting people know out ahead of them that so-and-so was coming. And I think that's what that is over there, because the viewpoint that we were at up there, there's like tons of cigarette butts, and then there's a cooking fire right there, and there's like food cans and stuff right there. So it kind of makes you think that maybe this is like a spotting location or something like that. I don't know for sure, but we're gonna stay here a night, and then I think tomorrow we're just going to like do a pretty good push and move through down to Batopilas, and then yeah, kind of just start moving on a little bit quicker because I don't know, it's like the first real signs that we've seen, or maybe thought we've seen, of cartel activity, adventure and stuff. So presently there is a gentleman who came by on a motorbike with 2 radios, and he stopped off and we asked him if it was okay to camp here and if we could go to Batopilas. He said yes, but he's currently up on the viewpoint with binoculars. Oh shit, there's 2 guys up there. There's 2 guys up there right now, and only one came on a motorbike. And it looks like he's radioing. And they're looking at us, so... I don't know what to do. We just drove off, so I guess it's okay for us to camp here, but that other guy's still here, so maybe they're just doing like a meetup or something.
So it's kind of like disconcerting. Like everything seems fine and friendly because it's the daytime. But if this guy is a cartel guy and now they have eyes on us, like there's a potential that they come back in the night, which would be really scary. But the problem is that like even if we move, we're still on this road. And there's nowhere for us to go other than to the next town, which is going to take us like probably like 5 hours to get there. So I don't know.
After some further deliberation, we decided to move further down the road to somewhere we were pretty certain no one else was hanging out. This spot had been marked on iOverlander, so at the very least we had some sense of assurance that it was somewhat safe.
Yeah, and thus far, no signs of a lookout.
No solar panels. No beer
radio
cans.
charger,
No millions of cigarette butts.
no trail.
It's probably good.
So right over there is where we were parked last night, and you can see the guy right on the rock. And it's so quiet up here that I could actually hear his radio just a minute ago.
So after seeing the kid still there on the hilltop, and I just like got some binoculars on him for a second there, and I think that he was watching us come up the whole time. And when we got up to that parking spot and went up to the viewpoint and like looked around, like he was just down the hill out of sight from us. I think the kid's up there all the time and just like on a lookout for something. I don't know what, but it's just one of those things where you're like, oh, we had lunch like just down the hill and we were probably being watched the whole time.
We later learned that we'd encountered what, amongst a few different names, is called a puntero, essentially a spotter that looks out for government, police, or rival cartel factions. They're stationed all throughout the mountains at viewpoints like we'd found the day before. Nothing particularly nefarious, just people looking out for their interests.
Batopilas, here we come.
We knew we had more cartel-occupied countryside to travel through, but our thoughts of that were quickly stolen away by the views that were beginning to fill our windshield.
Oh my gosh.
In our experience thus far on this route, it was totally worth it to choose our own path, traveling with caution but also with open minds. Luckily, our recent experience was the first and last encounter that we'd have with the cartel in this area. It's now something we can look back on and shake our heads before saying, remember that time when?
And this one looks like a house pet. Hi. Hi.
This happy little furball we affectionately named Sploot is one of only 2 dogs that we very nearly invited into the van and then drove off with.
It'll happen one day, babe. Okay, bye. Look at that cute little scruffer. Oh my goodness, he's so cute.
Hi, you little sploot. Hey, buddy. Are you the cutest thing? Are you the cutest thing? Yes, you are. You're so cute. Yes, what?
Hey, buddy. Hey, buddy. We're gonna miss you so much, okay?
Don't you get all soft on me. You're the only reason we don't have 10 dogs in the van, okay?
Before reaching Batopilas, we have a remaining descent that will plunge us thousands of meters to the valley floor at a rather alarming rate. And then finally, Batopilas, a tiny colonial mining town colonized by the Spanish in the 1700s and later officially founded in the 19th century. This town has a colorful past as it changed ownership between several American companies and saw American, Mexican, Spanish, German, and even Chinese fortune seekers grace its walls. For us, it's the first significant colonial town we'll visit and our first taste of some authentic northern Mexican culinary delights. Perhaps it should come as no surprise that while walking the streets of Batopilas, we couldn't shake the feeling of being momentarily transported back to Europe. Batopilas has only one main road in and one main road out. A few years back, the government paved the road, but since then, it has seen little to no maintenance. With the loose and crumbling mountain slopes on either side, this road is constantly pummeled by large rock falls, leaving the tarmac broken and littered with rock debris. A driver must use caution at all times to avoid punctured tires or bent rims. As Christmas was upon us, we chose this hilltop just outside a small town and settled in for the holidays. We spent 2 surprisingly chilly days here watching the sun rise and then fall, taking immense pleasure in the painted mountaintops in the distance at sunset. With Christmas behind us, we made a fast transit across Mexico's central plateau, arriving eventually in Nuevo Leon and Monterrey. We caught wind of a cool place to visit there with big mountains and pretty views. How that so quickly became a massive understatement still has our heads spinning. This is the La Huasteca region just outside of Monterrey, a popular climbing destination and also a pretty good spot to spend a few days and hike some mountains. After a couple days in La Huasteca, we hopped in the van and traveled a little further south to go see Cascada El Saltillo, located just upriver in the mountains from La Huasteca. After a short visit to the falls, it was once again time to continue moving south. We had our sights set on the state of San Luis Potosi, where we'd hopefully find some more waterfalls and this milky blue water that we'd been told so much about. But before reaching the border of SLP, we'd need to cross over the Sierra Madre Oriental, a mountain range we'd find ourselves crossing numerous times in the following months. It's funny the things you learn as you travel. One of our first lessons while traveling in Mexico is to never fully trust Google Maps, and if you do, be prepared for some extra adventure. The route we had chosen to cross the Sierra Madre Oriental this time would prove to be a little spicier than we had anticipated.
All of a sudden, we're on a
gravel route.
kind of gnarly, gravel road from smooth pavement. Just boom, it ends.
Admittedly, if it weren't for Google Maps steering us into some strange routes, we may have never passed through this region or crept along this sketchy gravel road. We try our best to stay open-minded and invite all adventures, both big and small. Google Maps seems to be making efforts to expand our horizons.
This morning was probably the coldest morning we've had in Mexico thus far. So we hit the road early and have been traveling for a little while, and now we're stopped beside a prison and having breakfast, which is cereal. So welcome to a life of living in a van in Mexico. We are on our way to Real de Catorce. It is a town that literally every single person in the world has told us to go to. So we're going. We are now on the road to Real de Catorce, and it seems that the whole way is cobblestone, which is cool, but also totally sucks at the same time.
Reflections.
Holy moly.
It's long.
This is a very long time.
I'm not usually claustrophobic, but that made me feel claustrophobic.
This little historic mountain town in San Luis Potosi, Mexico, is perched at nearly 2,800 meters above sea level. Once a booming silver mining center, it was nearly abandoned in the early 20th century, but has since transformed into a quiet, mystical destination. Its cobblestone streets, weathered and aged colonial buildings, and surrounding desert peaks make it a haven for artists, travelers, and spiritual seekers. Our tour of the town was brief but sufficient. We dined on some delicious food at one of the restaurants in town, snapped some photos, and then returned the way we came.
Here we go.
Another drive day later, and we had arrived at the edge of the jungle-adorned mountains near the eastern reaches of San Luis Potosi. This would be the first time I had experienced a real jungle. We expected to see temperatures climb rapidly, humidity become stifling, and our escape from it all would be the rivers and waterfalls. What we found was quite the opposite. We arrived in the Huasteca Potosina region just as a rather formidable polar vortex was passing over the lower United States and northern Mexico. Temperatures dropped to around 10 degrees Celsius, thick gray clouds blotted out the sun, and conditions became downright dreary. Certainly not what we had hoped for. The rivers that we had hoped would be our escape from the heat, although warmer than the air outside, were of less interest to us as we bundled up against the cold. Although we did brave the water at least a couple times. Gotta get clean somehow, after all. After a couple days in the cold and no promise of the weather improving, a decision was made to go somewhere else that looked as though it had reasonable weather. So we left behind the inviting rivers and cascadas in SLP, turned our wheels northeast, and headed for the state of Tamaulipas. The state of Tamaulipas is predominantly an agricultural state. However, with a chunk of the border dipping well into the Sierra Madre Oriental, we spied out a mountaintop spot that promised an interesting experience, and if not that, simply a quiet place to rest for a couple nights. We found a narrow, bumpy, and winding road that led up into the mountains and followed it for 5 kilometers, which took us a whopping 2.5 hours to complete. When we reached the end, we found a place to camp in a farmer's field on the outskirts of the small town of Altasima. We spent 2 gloriously quiet and peaceful nights there. The mornings were filled with beautiful birdsong, and during the day we wandered up to one of the peaks to get a little exercise and an aerial view of the surrounding mountains. As weather seemed to improve in the Huasteca Potosina region, we wandered back south to the sugarcane fields of San Luis Potosi in search of our first big waterfall in the region. What we found took our breath away. As 2 Western Canadians, we'd seen waterfalls before, but definitely nothing like this. Totally content with our short-lived visit to the falls, we wandered up the river and found a spot tucked away at the edge of a sugarcane field directly on the water. We spent the weekend there enjoying temperatures of 30 degrees Celsius while taking periodic dips in the river, all while being constantly attacked by no-see-ums. As things always seemed to go, our time in paradise had to end. So we pressed onward south. Weather was once again coming in, and we had high hopes that we could snag a few more waterfall visits before it got too cold again. Our route would take us deep into sugarcane country, where eventually every second vehicle passing us was a large and colorful sugarcane haulage truck. Being the gearhead that I am, I quickly became obsessed with all the different forms these working trucks took. When we reached Cascada de Micos, we walked through a place that would have otherwise been an absolute oasis. But instead of scorching sun overhead and high temperatures, the long-sleeve shirts we wore were barely enough to keep us comfortable. We didn't have it in us to swim, so we simply observed and then departed. As they say, you can't win 'em all. The following days, we saw temperatures drop to nearly freezing, with light drizzle falling from the gray skies. With no sign of improvement in the weather, we decided to depart San Luis Potosi once again and then return when it had warmed up. So, back over the mountains we went into the state of Guanajuato. I had Guanajuato City pinned on my map for years. All I really knew about it was that it's a cool city with lots of colorful buildings. We'll just add that to the list of massive understatements. What we found in Guanajuato City was a place bursting at the seams with color, culture, food, people, history, and pure, unbridled life.
Well, we both got food poisoning. We've been up all night barfing.
After a day and 2 nights of lying in the van with the sun beating down on us, it felt like a better idea to simply go and find a little bit of solitude. With our stomachs still roiling, we set off for a lake spot near San Miguel de Allende, where we found more heat, but at least it was calm and relatively quiet. Our next destination was Piedra de Bernal in the state of Cartel. We still weren't feeling back at 100%, but we weren't going to let that stop us. The giant rock monolith before us was begging to be climbed. Having completed our hike, we continued into the Sierra Gorda on our return trip to San Luis Potosi, making a brief stop off at the small town of Cuatro Palos. At the base of the Sierra Gorda Range, on the eastern side, we visited Cascada El Chuveje, which quickly turned into one of our favorite hidden gems amongst this massive mountain range. Then we'd finally made it back into San Luis Potosi, with our final destination there being the massive Cascada de Temul. But first, we'd need to complete a long overland route to get there, which would take us through multiple remote villages, smaller mountain ranges, more sugarcane fields, and eventually back into dense jungle. As we wandered along this route, we stumbled upon possibly one of the best hidden spots we'd experienced during our entire trip through Mexico. Here, we spent 2 days soaking up this out-of-sight jungle oasis. With our time at the jungle oasis over, we pressed on to complete our overland track to the falls.
Liking these stairs?
Not in particular.
Cascada de Tamul to this day remains my favorite waterfall in all of Mexico, and I think you can probably see why. And out of San Luis Potosi. Having seen Tamul, we had completed our waterfall tour of the Huasteca Potosina region and were once again pointed south, this time to the small town of Xilitla.
We need to do a little landscaping outside.
We stayed just outside of Xilitla for the night before heading back west across the Sierra Gorda range. This drive would take us high through cloud forests along a narrow 2-lane highway, lending us momentary views of the stunning mountainscapes that lay below. Two long drive days along the slow and winding 105, and we had arrived back at the western edge of the Sierra Gorda, our next destination being La Gloria Tolantango. But as the trend goes, Google Maps had another interesting and adventurous detour for us in store. What should have been a fairly quick drive turned into a long-lasting adventure that took us well into the late afternoon. So we made camp by a river just outside a small mountain village. We were immediately greeted by a local and his herd of goats. Another memorable experience we'll have to look back on fondly one day. Our adventure detour had only been paused for the night. In the morning, we continued our traverse along this mountain pass right into the craziest set of switchbacks we had ever seen. After an additional day of driving and the funnest overland detour these two Canadians could have asked for, we arrived at the prize at the end of the road, La Gloria Tolantango.
All right, you ready?
Ready?
Let's go.
What?
It's cold.
La Gloria Tolantango is the oasis of oases, a stunning natural wonder of epic proportion. Warm springs spilling out of the mountainside everywhere, pools for soaking built into the mountainside, and a warm, milky blue river crashing through the center. Now in the state of Mexico, we visited the ancient city of Teotihuacan before heading towards Mexico City.
Behind me?
Yeah.
This is Instagram. But ahead of me, this is reality.
Our plan was to street camp in Mexico City for a week, which of course required us to navigate the maze of roads complete with crazy traffic leading into the city.
We survived the drive into Mexico City.
That was pretty wild.
We'll be honest, we didn't come to Mexico City for the city itself. We came for the food, and food is what we found.
Croissant filled with apple.
But we also found a city full of natural spaces, community, art, music, culture, vibrant markets, and a deep and varied history. We spent a full 7 days in the La Condesa neighborhood, but it simply wasn't enough. Without a doubt, we'll return to Mexico City one day to see and explore more. In addition to our time spent wandering around looking for food, we worked in a new coffee shop almost every day and eventually met up with our Canadian friends James and Bryony from Vancouver Island. With a week of stealth camping on the streets behind us, we were in dire need of quiet and calm. Just beyond the limits of Mexico City lies Volcan, El Popo, and Izta. Popo is still somewhat active, having erupted as recently as 2 years ago. Today, you can watch as plumes of steam and smoke emit from the top of the cone. We stayed at the base of El Popo just long enough to let our bodies relax, prompting the release of a cold for me, which Meg inevitably caught soon after. As you may have caught on by now, we try not to let sickness hamper our experience. So we decided to go hike Malinche, a volcano with a peak at 4,461 meters, or 14,636 feet. This perhaps wasn't the smartest decision we've made, but as we often say, full send. A short drive away, we arrived in a pine forest that looked an awful lot like the forests we knew from back home, eliciting a light episode of homesickness. We slept here at nearly 3,000 meters, and then the next morning started up the trail. Although it had a fairly soft start, turned into a brutal slog as we passed 3,600 meters, and the air thinned out sufficiently enough to leave us gasping for air after every 10th step.
If I could shed a tear, I would.
It's too dry.
But I'm broken.
You're doing great, babe.
Although a slightly self-inflicted struggle, hiking a 14er while sick is a struggle we welcome, oddly enough. We truly believe this kind of thing just makes us tougher, more resilient humans, and that perhaps is one of the primary underlying goals of this trip, right next to filling to the brim our bank of life experiences. Because we hadn't suffered enough, we made another rash decision, and instead of sleeping at a lower elevation to allow our bodies to recover, we drove straight from the base of Malinche to the base of Pico de Orizaba. For the next 2 days, we'd camp at 4,023 meters. Not particularly optimal for recovery, but a pretty epic place to sleep for a couple nights. As we had now traveled pretty far east at this latitude and sitting almost directly on the border of Puebla and Veracruz, it seemed to us a good idea to continue east to the Gulf of Mexico, a body of water neither of us had seen before. So the decision was made and we set off down the mountain, descending within an hour from 13,200 feet to almost sea level and back into sugarcane country. If it wasn't for the sugarcane fields hemming in the roads, it was the multitude of sugarcane trucks that informed us where we had arrived. Soon, the air became thick with humidity and the smell of salt water. Before us lay the Gulf of Mexico, the second Mexican coastline we'd seen. At this point, we hadn't seen the ocean in many months, so the excitement for saltwater and sea air was pretty high, let alone this being a new to us body of water. The heat and humidity were new things to us. As Western Canadians, we had rarely, if ever, experienced temperatures above 30 degrees Celsius. Here, all day it was well above 34 degrees Celsius, and at night, temperatures only dipped as low as 25. We lasted only a few days here before we grew hot enough to drive us to go find some kind of relief. Although returning to the coast and camping at the base of sand dunes seemed like a pretty neat idea, the heat here persisted, although it was significantly windier, lending a meager cooling effect. But the wind opened the door to a new and rather interesting travel lesson. Close your windows at night in the dunes.
You can see that the whole dashboard is covered in sand because this window here was just a crack open. You can see it's all over everything. So as you can see.
When we left the dunes early in the morning in search of a different place to camp further south, we plunged ourselves into a full day of misadventure that led us to many dead ends, through container ports, and eventually all the way out of Veracruz into Oaxaca.
I don't think so. No,
Days when you simply cannot find camp are inevitable when you travel like us. But we try to keep our spirits high, and in this case, our body temperatures low.
You want some juice? Orange juice, pineapple juice, and a pineapple.
Wow. So it's been pretty much like 30 degrees the entire time we've been driving.
Probably more. Oh my gosh.
I'm just being
so
conservative.
It's been so hot.
These freshly squeezed juices are really becoming a thing. They're so good. I was so parched. All my water is hot.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I know.
It's a very nice bridge.
You can make it over there.
Oaxaca is a Mexican state we'd heard a lot of very good things about. Crossing the border from the farmlands of Veracruz into the jungle-covered foothills of Oaxaca, we felt a sense of relief as the promise of high elevation and cooler air lay ahead of us. But first, we'd enjoy a few days on this pristine and wonderfully cool river.
Gracias.
35 feels like 39. It is stinking hot.
As temperatures rose at sea level, we commenced our climb up into the Oaxacan Mountains, eventually reaching the top of this pass at over 3,000 meters.
Like a minute down the road, we found this. We got a beautiful sunset.
A decent camping spot proved a challenge to find in the mountains. However, after a few hours of searching, we squeezed into a spot well off the main highway. In the morning, we discovered that we had entered into a different world here amidst the high elevation mountaintops of Oaxaca. The forests here felt ancient in a way we hadn't encountered before in Mexico. Clouds passed over mountaintops and through trees, and utter silence blanketed the forest, the silence only being permeated by gusts of wind and distant birdsong. On the western side of the mountains lay Oaxaca City, another place we'd been urged to visit. We had plans to meet up with our Canadian friends James and Bryony there and link up with them for a couple weeks of exploration.
Juicy base.
It would seem that the Oaxaca City nightlife is just as lively, if not more, than life during the day. We were afforded a brief look into this vibrant world before returning to our campground for the night. First up in our explorations with James and Bryony were the markets, streets, and cathedrals of Oaxaca City. We ate, wandered through textile shops, listened to the city speak, and watched tranquil moments amidst the perpetual rhythm of the city. And when we needed a moment of quiet for ourselves, we wandered into the cathedrals. The following day, we left for the Oaxacan Mountains once again, stopping in at one of the small pueblos known for its textile production. There we learned about the creation of the natural dyes and fibers that go into the myriad of different textile products sold by the Zapotec people. From the small towns at the base of the mountains, we ascended all the way back up to 3,100 meters, where we stayed for the night at an eco park with a particularly nice view of the surrounding mountains. In the morning, we moved on to some of the other mountaintop pueblos that dot the Oaxacan mountainside. These towns are well known for their large selection of edible mushrooms. However, due to them being out of season, we found none to consume, at which point we turned to the second delicacy in this region, which oddly enough is trout. We parked for the night at this restaurant with an exceptional vista and waited for a meal of home-cooked trout and vegetables to be prepared for us. We'll have you know, it was hands down the best trout meal we had ever eaten. Words simply fall short of describing how good it was. From camp at the restaurant, we explored the mountains on foot for a while before leaving town in search of camp somewhere in the wild, which turns out was a challenge here as well. After an hour or more of searching, we found ourselves tucked away in the trees for the night.
Oh shit, it's fine, stop bragging.
Maybe we should listen to some Willie Nelson. Is it Willie Nelson?
For the next 2 days, we wandered from pueblo to pueblo, stopping off at hacienda ruins that we found roadside and whatever else tickled our fancy. At least one of us in the group hadn't had enough of off-road adventures for the day and decided to do a quick side mission that didn't turn out as expected. A quick and easy recovery later, we were moving again. No damage to the vehicle, but perhaps a well-learned lesson on the various forms of sharp drop-offs along Mexican roadsides. In this part of Mexico, if you're not driving the main roads that follow natural ridges in the mountains and you want to reach the pueblo on the other side of the valley, your only choice is to descend all the way from the top and then ascend all the way back up. When possible, we stop to cool off in flowing rivers, a rarity during the dry season here in Oaxaca. To finish off our time in the mountains, we visited Tierra el Agua in the Sierra Madre del Sur before returning to Oaxaca City for some well-needed van care and maintenance.
Oh, hey there.
Hey there. On to side 2?
Yeah, I'm getting quicker at this.
Mr. Fix-It?
That's me. It's a fixed day. We're fixing everything on the exterior and the interior.
Before heading out of Oaxaca, we had one final market stop to make, one that has existed for centuries and carries with it the weight of time.
I want everything at this stand.
The Tlacolula Market is a place where everything and nothing has changed. Likely the same wares, textiles, fruits, vegetables, food staples, and livestock have been sold here for over 10 centuries. The only addition being Western technologies and Caucasian tourists. Tuk-tuks continuously flow in and out of the market while Zapotec abuelas advertise their offerings at the top of their lungs, repeating the same line over and over that they have likely called out tens of thousands of times over hundreds of market days. This place is beautiful chaos, a pinnacle of enduring culture and tradition. Our travels once again take us south, but this time through the Sierra Madre del Sur mountain range to the Pacific coast of Mexico. We plan to make a brief stop off at San Jose del Pacifico, another town well known for its selection of edible mushrooms, but these ones aren't necessarily the culinary kind.
Campsite. They weren't kidding when they said it was a dirt lot.
In the pueblo of San Jose del Pacifico, they don't try to hide the fact that they're known for magic mushrooms. In fact, the consumption of the psychedelic fungi is an age-old practice that is now shared with a large variety of spiritualist travelers from around the world. And in the small neighboring town of San Mateo Rio Hondo, you can find an even quieter and more tranquil existence, as well as excellent kombucha. The last day of mountaintop tranquility and cool air passed us by, and it was time to descend all the way to the Pacific Ocean, where silence was exchanged for crashing waves, and comfort was exchanged for sweltering heat and constantly feeling sticky. It was at this juncture in our travels that we came across the revelation that we now sat on the Pacific coast, on a sandy beach that could be featured in one of those travel brochures we talked about earlier. But we hadn't flown here. We had driven our home along thousands of kilometers of road, over innumerable mountain passes, multiple Mexican states, and countless epic landscapes. It had been a long journey to get here, but it wasn't over yet, by any means. Over 2 days of camping on the beach, we did our best to soak it in as much as possible. We attempted to stay cool with periodic dips in the ocean and remained in the shade as often as we could while consuming as many cold beverages as our fridge could provide. Once we had soaked up enough of what we consider resort life on the beach, we went out in search of our own private spot along the coast. Some hours of scouring a satellite image had turned up some spots further east along the shore, and it was just a matter of wandering out to verify if we could camp at any of the spots. Unfortunately, we struck out on the first spot, but made camp at the second, where a hot spring-fed river met the ocean. In the morning, a herd of goats pranced into our camp spot and told us we were on their turf. So we vacated the premises and made our way further down the coastline. It's always impressive what you'll find when you follow a sand road out from the main highway towards the coast here in Mexico. If you put in the time, you'll often find something pretty great. At the end of this one, we arrived at a sand dune that gave us real Baja California vibes and an epic sunset to prove its point. With the thunderous crash of waves somehow lulling us to sleep at night, but also acting as an alarm clock in the morning, we enjoyed 2 nights here on this sandy shoreline. We watched in wonder as pelican fighter groups skimmed the waves as if on an attack mission, the waves reaching up to them like anti-aircraft ordnance. This kind of spectacle will forever remind this sci-fi nerd of a certain well-known Hollywood space battle involving a certain large round object that's definitely not a moon. The state of Chiapas was next on our list of Mexican states to visit. Along with Oaxaca, we had heard a lot from others about the wonders that this southern state contained within its borders, and we were eager to find them for ourselves. Right out of the gate, Chiapas had our lips mouthing the words, wow. Cascada El Aguacero provided a well-needed cool-off as temperatures from the coast had chased us inland and our thick Canadian blood hadn't quite thinned enough to really allow us to be comfortable in the heat. The next place we visited is a place that is so important to Chiapan culture that you'll find it on its coat of arms. Sumadero Canyon is an impressive sight to behold. From the viewpoints at the top, you look down 1,000 meters to Rio Grijalva below. And if you're keen to see it from another vantage, you can take a boat ride to see it from below, something we highly recommend. From the water, you'll spy a variety of wildlife, including approximately 100 species of bird, spider monkeys, iguanas, and crocodiles, believe it or not. it's still quite hot, so we do our best to stop off at water sources wherever possible. Cascada Chorrilladero is an exciting opportunity to both cool off and do some impromptu spelunking. Then we were climbing once again back into the mountains, into the clouds and cool temperatures, with some more town exploration ahead. San Cristobal de las Casas has a colorful history of mixed and clashing cultures and rebellion. In its later and calmer years, it's a place where you can find excellent food, vibrant Mayan, Tzotzil, and Tzetzel textiles, along with an inviting year-round microclimate.
This is a chicken covered in a poblano sauce, and Alex has crispy pork taquitos.
Only 20 minutes out of town, you'll find the peaceful nature reserve of Arcotete, a geographic formation of karst caves speared through by a calmly flowing river. This spot provided us with a well-needed place to recharge. Barely anyone passed us during the day, and the nights were almost chilly, allowing us a full night's rest in blissful comfort. A few hours southeast, we were rolling through the city of Comitán de Dominguez, and shortly after approaching Cascada El Chiflón. We made camp beside the river flowing down from the waterfall, took a dip in our temporary private pool before making the hike up to the falls. What we found at the top of the trail was nothing short of magical, and left us questioning if what we were seeing was really real. As Semana Santa approached, we made a quick excursion out to the town of Uninajab. The public area where we camped for the night has a series of pools ranging in size, all built into the hillside. The town's water supply comes from a spring further up the hill, and if you look into the backyards of many of the houses you pass in town, you'll notice that almost everyone has a pool fed by the same spring. As the public area was filling up quickly with Semana Santa celebrators, we got in a quick dip and headed out of town.
Massive trees. Oh.
That's the brightest thing I ever saw.
That's beautiful.
But we weren't finished with the waterworks quite yet. Up the hillside on our way back to Comitán, we stumbled upon a place that we were certain was mentioned at some point in a Tolkien or C.S. Lewis book. What this place taught us was to follow our nose. Ojo de Agua was not planned, and we had already passed it earlier on our way to El Chiflón. Meg just happened to notice it while mapping us further into Chiapas, and we decided on a whim to venture off our path to explore, a decision that paid off in the riches of memories made. Heading back east, we made our way to the Lagos de Montebello region, a series of lakes within limestone craters found along the border of Guatemala. There, we rolled into another camp spot that we can now fondly refer to as one of the best in southern Mexico. We stayed here for 3 days, attended to van maintenance, caught up on work, and enjoyed a chance to slow down for a little bit. When we emerged from our lakeside hideaway, we made a quick visit to Lago Internacional, a small lake perched directly over the border of Mexico and Guatemala. We walked across and made our unofficial first visit to Guatemala, a fun and unique experience considering the contrasting ramifications of doing the same back home.
Look, honey, I'm in 2 places at once.
Oh my gosh.
What a shame.
After making our brief visit to Guatemala, we explored the other lakes for a few hours before heading east along the border towards the outlands of Chiapas, where hidden waterfalls and milky blue rivers abound. By chance, we steered off the main road for a small village after spying a promising spot on the satellite image. A bumpy gravel road led us to this locals' hangout where we found masses of friendly Mexicans celebrating Semana Santa. We stayed a night, enough time to thoroughly cool off before continuing on. Further east on the 307 and down another gravel road, we arrived at Las Nubes, where lies a unique cascada. Aside from the obvious flow of water over this cliff, much of the water actually travels down through the rock from a little further up the river and exits below the waterfall. That evening, we found camp alongside Rio Oaxacan, a spot we should have stayed at a little longer, but unfortunately did not have the foresight then to decide otherwise. With the morning came further progression east along the Laser Strait section of the 307 that parallels Guatemala. This road, although straight, demanded total concentration as it was full of potholes, topes, and the encroaching foliage attempting to reclaim its stolen territory. All the way out here, even though we were surrounded on all sides by palm groves and agricultural land, it felt really remote. These are the borderlands of Mexico's southern regions, where there is little to no governance or authority, and life goes on without the watchful eyes of the world. As Semana Santa came to a close, we found a beach alongside Rio Chihoy, where we thought we might find some solitude for a few nights. What we found was quite the opposite.
Well, tell me what just happened.
We were just hanging out in the river, and there's a family here celebrating the last day of Semana Santa, and a gentleman walked over with this to give to us, just because they're the nicest people ever. Shrimp. Unbelievable.
Wonderful.
People around here, I swear.
Yeah.
So kind.
Now sit right there.
As per the norm, during our travels, we'd stumbled upon another local spot, and as it was the weekend, we were soon surrounded by families there to enjoy the river.
So, tell us what happened.
We got whistled out of the water again to be hand-delivered a platter of food. Just ridiculous.
Look at this. Oh my gosh, it looks so delicious. And we were like just talking about
I'm being hungry. She read my mind.
What we've also learned during our travels is an acceptance of a culture we don't entirely understand. Although we are two Canadians who seek out solitude, Mexican culture and custom is made up of strong community and family values. When we try to get away from other people, Mexicans get out and enjoy time together, which in this day and age is really quite special and something we've really grown to appreciate. With the end of the official week of Semana Santa, it was time for us to start making our way northwest towards the exit from Chiapas. On our way out, we stopped off first at Cascada Huelibja and then Cascada Misolja. And to top it all off, we made the extra drive back south to Agua Azul, a spot that is legend, wait for it, dairy. Although Agua Azul is quite the touristy place, the cold water and cascading pools more than made up for the crowds. We'd return here in a heartbeat if only to get one more hour in this beautiful water. After leaving Chiapas, we made a quick transit back to the Gulf of Mexico and north into Yucatan. As we traversed the peninsula in the direction of the coastal town of El Cuyo, we kept our eyes trained on the skies, and eventually, as the road led us underneath dark clouds brewing overhead, the skies opened up and we were gifted with the first heavy rainfall we'd seen in almost 6 months. The feeling was incredible and so very welcome. Approaching El Cuyo, we crossed a saltwater lagoon, which we later learned is a protected area for the flamingo mating season. We hadn't expected to spot flamingos until the Altiplano in Argentina, so this was a rather pleasant surprise. In the beach town of El Cuyo, we connected with our friends Daniel and Josephine of Project Unbound, who we'd be traveling with for the next week. Three days spent on the beach, and we were once again ready for new things to see. As we were in the neighborhood of one of the current 7 wonders of the world, we pointed southwest and headed for the Mayan city of Chichen Itza. Chichen Itza is a major ancient Mayan city found centrally in the Yucatan Peninsula. It flourished between the 7th and 10th centuries as a center of politics, religion, and trade. Its most famous structure, El Castillo, is a step pyramid that aligns with the equinoxes to create a serpent-like shadow.
What are you doing, you goof?
Other highlights include the Great Ball Court and the Cenote Sagrado, used for rituals and offerings.
I actually came here for the lizards.
Blending Maya and Toltec styles, the site reflects a rich cultural exchange. Today, Chichen Itza is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and one of the new 7 wonders of the world. As many people well know, the Yucatan Peninsula is rich in cenotes, large holes in the bedrock carved away by water over millennia. Some are open to the sky and others are in the form of caves. We were keen to explore the latter form, so we made camp at Cenote Inuk.
Wow, this is so deep.
Just down the river, we found another cave cenote, one that was far larger in comparison. The phrase otherworldly experience comes to mind when considering what we found here beneath the earth. Then, with the advent of cliff jumping, a poor decision was made which resulted in a memory I would rather not have made.
Yeah. Oh no!
24, no.
How you doing, Alex?
Not so good. Well, phew, that was a drive.
Big day.
We are here in Cancun, parking up beside the hotels. We'll see what tomorrow brings.
Yeah.
Having arrived in Cancun, we were once again reminded of the fact that we had driven our home to a destination most of the world takes a plane to get to. Then, before we knew it, our time in Mexico was rapidly coming to a close as we made our way towards the border of Belize.
All right, we are stamped out of Mexico.
Yes. Step 1 done.
Whew. That was
Super easy.
easy.
Yep.
No man's land.
Our time in Mexico was special. Not only was it the first Spanish-speaking country with a vastly different culture that we visited along our Pan-American highway journey, it also represents the first time we have truly left our comfort zone and opened ourselves up to international travel by vehicle. It's a major inflection point on a trip that will inevitably change the people we are now into the people we want to be. What we have shown you exists within the borders of Mexico is only the tip of the iceberg. We merely passed through only 20 states in this massive country. With 11 remaining, there's a lifetime of exploration still to be had in Mexico. We feel immensely fortunate that the border of this beautiful place is only a short drive from home, and that we can return to revisit places we loved and explore deeper into the places we wished we saw more of. We want to say a massive thank you to the country and people of Mexico for the hospitality that we experienced during our travels and the memories we get to carry with us. Mark our words, we'll be back to see more. If you want more or a far more detailed and in-depth look at our travels throughout Mexico, you can check out our Mexico playlist, which features weekly films from our travels throughout mainland Mexico, as well as our time on the Baja Peninsula during the 2 winters previous. Thank you for being here with us on this journey. We hope our stories and experiences spark something in you. Maybe a bit of curiosity, maybe the urge to get out and explore this big, beautiful world for yourself. Now go chase that next adventure and make the kind of memories that stick with you. And until next time, keep on roaming. If you would like to see behind the scenes content, get route and camp spot information, or if you'd just like to help support us by putting some gas in our tank each month, you can contribute on Patreon. Oh hey there bud, and before you go, don't forget to go on over to slowroamers.com to get yourself some rad Slow Roamers merch. And for additional photos and commentary on our journey, you can follow along on Facebook and Instagram. Alrighty Mexico, we love you dearly, we'll miss you, but gosh darn it, we'll be back. Hasta luego.